Hi there. I see people are coming in right now. I'm just going to give another minute or two while the attendees are entering, and in a minute I will get us started. On your screens, can you see it populating in the number of attendees? Okay.
No. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. I was
Oh,
looking for.
good. I'm glad. Yeah, nice. It's good. We have a nice crowd. Okay. Okay, it's 12:02. People are coming in now, so I will go ahead and get us started. Welcome, I'm Kimberly Fine, and on behalf of my partner Neil Handwerker and myself, I am delighted to welcome you to Careers in Healthcare for NPLs, non-practicing lawyers. We have a wonderful lineup for you today, offering insight into several career paths, in the healthcare industry. A few housekeeping notes. We encourage engagement, questions, and wisdom sharing. We do ask that you please keep yourself on mute while our panelists are speaking. The presentation portion of this event is being recorded and will be available on demand on the EXJ community platform. When we begin the Q&A, we will cease the recording so that you may ask your questions freely. Please place your questions in the Q&A box. It is now my absolute pleasure to welcome our panelists. We are joined by Santosh Shatalia, Chief Human Resource Officer for National Healthcare Associates, Inc., Rob Halpern, Senior Vice President, Marketing, Dario, Caitlin Zimmerman, Compliance Manager, Organ Recovery Systems, Advocate Health, and Michael Genovese, Dr. Michael Genovese, Chief Medical Officer, Behavioral Health, Access Telecare. I'd like to thank all of you for attending, and I'd like to thank our panel. And with that, I'm going to turn it right over to Michael.
Thank you, Kimberly. And thanks for everybody for joining us today. I hope that everybody enjoys the conversation and walks away having learned something. What I'd like to do is start going around and getting some information from some of our panelists. Ladies first, Caitlin, if you'd like to start, if you want to tell us a little bit about what you did after law school, did you practice? What made you make a pivot into healthcare?
So it actually started for me before even law school. When it comes to healthcare, I am the daughter of a surgeon, granddaughter of a surgeon, daughter of a nurse. The only reason that I am not the third generation of Dr. Zimmerman is my ADD brain. So our medical family, not knowing about lawyers, was like, "Oh, let's just send her to law school. We can have actual in-house counsel then." And went to law school, and the only reason that I was able to really get through it is kind of doing that whole take healthcare law, do torts, all of that good stuff. And then I unfortunately graduated and passed the bar right at the height of the recession in '09 and 2010. So my intent then was to kind of just start applying anywhere and everywhere. So I didn't really practice, but I went around with one of my father's patients was with the Cook County Public Defender's Office. So I hopped around with him for a while, just kind of making my way around 26 in California, if anybody is aware of that lovely locale. A couple other, his med mal attorney at the time, went around with him and kind of learned a little bit that way. And then my uncle, who used to be an old insurance exec, got together with some friends post passage of Obamacare, and they got the funding for the co-op in Illinois that started basically the insurance company under Obamacare. And they all sat around these execs and said, okay, we need a chief medical officer, a chief legal officer, a president. What's a compliance officer? And so my uncle said, well, my niece knows everything about healthcare. She doesn't have a job. She just passed the bar. She can figure it out. So for 6 months, I taught myself healthcare compliance. I'd never even really heard of healthcare compliance. Even back in 2010, it was still maybe 10, 15 years old, but not. I asked my father, who's the compliance officer at your hospital? He's like, my what? So It was an immersion into what I found to be, in short, basically my niche. It was using my legal understanding and my experience in reading laws and really reading statutes and interpreting regulations, except I never had to read, like a big contract, sit in the basement of a law firm for 40 hours, a day and read contracts, or, it takes me a glass of wine and a Xanax to go into court. So I never had to do that again. And I was just like, I found my home with healthcare compliance. So I stuck with that, but stuck with the healthcare system, and now with a small device company.
And now I can tell you from working at large health systems, the healthcare compliance person is one of the most important people in the organization. So sounds like it was a good move for you.
It was.
That's fantastic. Why don't we keep going around the horn? Rob, do you want to sort of talk about the same sort of thing?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I'm a bit older than you, Caitlin, apparently. I was in law school in the '90s when I grad in like LA Law. Just finished being on TV, and it was like the birth of the big firm. Giant classes of associates moving into those places, and through momentum, I was just kind of propelled into that. And I did practice commercial litigation for about 5 years. And then I helped on the side, kind of side project, I helped a group of engineers leave Hamilton Standard with some regenerative hydrogen-based fuel cell technology. And that entrepreneurial experience just lit me up. And I was like, oh, I gotta do that. And there were plenty of um, you know, opportunities to go be, a lawyer, right, in a corporate environment. That was my aim. My aim was to do the business side of things. So I needed a change agent. So frankly, I just tossed my hat in the ring, went back to business school, which was great, and did exactly what I needed it to do. And since that time, I've been doing entrepreneurial high growth marketing in healthcare, now digital healthcare, and really haven't looked back. So it's been a really great experience.
That sounds like a really cool experience. Thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
Santosh, would you like to talk a little bit about your background?
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Good afternoon, everybody. Michael, go Knicks. Very happy about today. Um, I graduated probably the same year as Caitlin, actually. I graduated at the height of the recession. So after law school, I did litigate for a good 9 or 10 years. Did some general civil litigation, but kind of found myself kind of veering towards healthcare, and eventually into healthcare regulatory. I had an opportunity to eventually work for the company I'm working with now, National Healthcare Associates, which is senior care, rehab, and a lot of different things like that, ancillary companies. I went in as compliance. I went in as legal, and risk management, and I loved it, because it was, litigation was great, but I never saw myself as a trial lawyer. And so at the end of the day, I was able to help a company mitigate risk, identify risk, mitigate them, but from the business side. And to me, there's nothing else like it. I did that for 4 years. I was actually going to go become a general counsel somewhere else, and they gave me the opportunity to serve as chief HR officer, and it's the best job I've ever had. I love my job. I serve 8,000 employees every single day, and it is the perfect crossroad of legal, because there's a lot of legal in HR, and there's a lot more CHROs that are lawyers, but then it's operations, and it's the perfect mix, because you got to be able to know the laws, navigate the laws, but then also get to the operational end game, and so that's great. That's sort of my history.
Fascinating. And we're going to come back to some of that because that's really interesting. And I think that everyone is going to have a little bit to say about that last bit that you said. I should probably say a couple words about how I got here as well. So my dad have some similarities to Caitlin. My dad was a cardiologist. My mom was an emergency room nurse. I was more of a humanities guy in college. And so I was an English major, and then I went to law school and purposely was seeking a job at a law firm that defended doctors in medical malpractice litigation. So I worked there for a few years. And the way it works is that the senior partners try the cases, and the first year, second year, third year guys like me did all the research, right? And in a medical malpractice litigation, if you're defending, say, an OBGYN in a hysterectomy case, the partner trying the case almost has to know how to do a hysterectomy. So while some people were researching the law, I was researching the medicine. And while I was doing that, I was like, wow, this medicine stuff is pretty cool. And then I decided, well, you know what? I don't have enough student loan debt. Why don't I take on some more and go back to medical school? And for me, it has been really great. There's a lot of overlap between medicine and the law, particularly in psychiatry. And also, I think having like a leadership position in large healthcare organizations, you interface with government relations, you interface with risk, with quality and compliance. And it helps in that way, which kind of leads me to another question, Caitlin had said how her legal training obviously translated directly into what she's doing. I'm wondering, Rob and Santosh, if you could say a little bit about how your legal training, not even like the studying of the law, but the way you think and the sort of way we were taught helps in your career. Either one, anyone feel free to jump in.
So
First, Rob.
yeah, so I'll jump in. So I do marketing, right? I do marketing in business, and it's interesting because all of us have experience with marketing. I mean, we're all consumers, and so I get incessant contributions from my colleagues about, oh, I don't really like that color purple. Maybe, but I'm like, you're not the demo, so don't worry about it. But anyway, the point is that marketing, the best definition I've ever heard of marketing is that it's simply creating and capturing the perception of value. That's it. Every commercial you've ever seen, every aisle you've ever walked down the supermarket and looked at the packages, it's just creating and capturing the perception of value. And given that, carefully chosen words are the tools of the trade. Well, what about law? Well, carefully chosen words are the tools of the trade, right? So it just carried over directly. I thought it was really kind of hand in glove in terms of that persuasion and that, analytic thinking. And when blending, the art of argument with the research behind things.
Completely makes sense. And that is a great definition of marketing. So I'm walking away learning something. So thank you for that.
You got it.
Santosh, you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so a couple things. One is, so when we're in law school, one of the big things you got to know, right? They teach you as soon as you walk in the door, issue spotting. You got to be able to take a hypothetical, figure out where the issues are. That's all I do every day, right? It's figuring out. I get a phone call, and it's probably part of my favorite part of the day where they give me a whole scenario, and now I got to think. My mind just goes back to being a lawyer, and I'm like, all right, here are the different risks that we have. And so my legal training and the legal training I had allows me to do that very quickly. I will say that there are other human resources professionals out there. No disrespect to them, but as a lawyer, I'm able to spot things just a little bit quicker than they are. So from an issue spotting perspective, that's been huge. The other thing, though, as a litigator, I know how lawyers think. So I know where they're going to go, and I know where we can take risk and where we can't take risk. And I'm able to move and make decisions with a steady hand and quicker hand because, we'll deal with it. We'll deal with what may come. But it's so I think not just my legal education, but then my legal training has allowed me to really excel in this role. And I think I'm grateful for it.
Yeah, it was valuable in and of itself, the training. And Caitlin, aside from the obvious, you're interpreting regulations, what else has helped you in your role?
Again, that interpretive, that understanding of just what people are saying. To Rob's point, what are the words getting at? Especially when you're talking to other high intellect individuals. That's one thing that I always found helpful was, yes. So if I was in a law firm and, he had to come up with a brief for the partners or something like that, you can't dumb it down You're obviously talking to superiors or, on your par. That's how I always approached finding, summarizing laws and regulations for physicians, for APRNs, for PhDs. You can't summarize something or give a presentation or do your education on compliance or on a new, PA collaboration law and dumb it down to that standard of eighth grade education level that you're supposed to do for typical excuse me, marketing general mass concept. You're talking to people who don't know anything about law, Michael being the exception, or any other MDJDs, but you're talking to highly intellectual people, but who don't necessarily understand the nuance of laws and regulations. So you're trying to convey what you would do not necessarily happening to be in a law firm, but in a, setting where you're general counsel and you're talking to your marketing department on what you can and can't do. So in a healthcare setting, it's the same concept. You have these highly intelligent people. You can't offend them. They do think highly of themselves. You can't make them feel stupid. But you have to make it consumable information, and that you want to make them feel comfortable, and that you're not, dumbing anything down.
Yeah, you have to be able to, I think it was Einstein said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough, right? So
Yes.
you have to really understand it well enough so that you can convey that information. And there's a thread that all three of you said that sort of occurs to me, which, in all of our current positions, there are many stakeholders. And remember in law school, like oftentimes you were told to take one side of the issue or the other. So you really just have to be almost like a journalist, or like just the facts, figure out what they are, be able to take one side or the other. And I have found that to be helpful in trying to be objective about things, in sort of mediating differences of opinions from different stakeholders. In my world, it might be clinicians want one thing, hospital operators want another thing, and I'm in the middle speaking both languages to either party. Does that resonate with anybody? Yeah. Rob, how's it with
Absolutely.
you? Or Kate? Yeah, tell me.
Absolutely, from a compliance standpoint, because we are the epitome of the opinion shopper department. We will get everybody coming to us and saying, well, legal told me this, and operations told me this, and my executive told me this. What are you going to say? Well, I'll tell you, but you're just going to have to be able to determine where your risk level is, but you can't just pick and choose. I'm not the ultimate arbiter, but
Yeah, we get a lot of opinion shopping too until people get the opinion that they would like. Santa, sounds like that you'd be in that position frequently as well.
Yeah, yeah. It similar to what Caitlin said. I think it's they want to know. I think everybody has a different opinion, and they want to know where I'm coming from, and they're just looking for what they're looking for, their answer. So
Yeah. And we have to be able to give them sometimes not the answer they want, or sometimes the answer is, I don't have a yes or no for you. Let me lay out exactly what you're saying. Here are the risks, and then you have to go make the decision yourself. Rob, I wanted to ask you if you made this jump a while ago. For people now who are thinking about maybe pivoting from a traditional legal career, or maybe they've already made that decision, they just don't know in which direction they'd like to go. Anything that you would say to people in that position?
Yeah, I get asked that a lot. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who went into law for a variety of reasons, but then once they were in it, kind of got dissatisfied with what, the actual practice of it is. I mean, look, if you went to law school and maybe you passed the bar as well, you're smart. You just are. You're smart and you know how to think, right? So what you need to do is figure out where you want to be and how you're going to add value, right? It's not enough to just know like, oh, geez, I'd really like a career in, I don't know, being an agent in entertainment. Oh, okay, well that's fine, but how are you going to add value, right? What's your superpower and how does it translate? And you've got a lot at your disposal from everything that you learned in law school, and maybe what you've, learned in practice. I would say one word of caution is that if you've spent time practicing the way law firms act and courts act and that kind of thing, that organizational behavior is pretty unique and doesn't really translate into business. Business is really about coalition building. It's really about, bringing people, into the mix and, sussing out, their concerns and, and creating bridges and stuff like that. And I think law is, when you're in law school, you're more like straight ahead, bullish, my way or the highway, kind of thing. So you need to kind of be mindful of the need maybe to acquire skills in that direction of coalition building.
That's really interesting. Yeah, thank you for that.
Sure.
Santosh, anything that you would add to what Rob said?
Yeah, so just to reiterate, so the question I just want to make sure is someone who's looking to pivot to a non-legal role, what should they, how would
Yeah, like
Yeah.
either they're looking to make a pivot, like maybe they're, this isn't what I thought it was. A lot of people get into law and they figure, oh wow, I'm not Atticus Finch. This isn't what I thought I was going to be doing, right? And so they're thinking about maybe making a pivot, or they've just finished law school and they're thinking, traditional law practice isn't for me. I want to make another move. Any advice for people like that?
yeah. I think when I was going through the process in my head of, because you get nervous, right? You get out of litigation or you get out of the practice of law and you're like, oh boy, like if I leave, am I going to be able to come back? Right. And so I really had to think it through. I think at the end of the day, if you're feeling that, all right, I'm not going to be the trial lawyer, I'm just not, I don't love being in a courtroom setting or I don't want to be in a law firm setting. Um, I do think that you really obviously do your research. But that I have a few things that I think would make someone successful outside, being a lawyer, but going into the business field. First of all, you got to be business minded. So you got to think of the bottom line. So it's not just about, I think many times I talk to lawyers in-house and it's always about, well, you can't do that, you can't do that, you can't do that. I'm going to tell you right now in the business field, get to yes. That's where you need to get to. That's what's going to make you successful. No is not going to get you successful. So I think that's really important is always trying to find a way to yes. Customer service goes so much further than you can ever imagine. That is the number one thing I teach my team or push on my team. If you're always thinking customer first, client first, you're going to succeed. Again, back to being ops focused, operations focused, think practical. Don't think of what's actually going to work in your organization. And so just a couple other things I think are, I don't know that this is totally answering your question, but I'm just thinking of the things that I think would be helpful for someone who's looking to make that pivot. Those are some of the things being data centric, and also really honing in on public speaking. I think that's really helpful if you can get out there and talk to people and be able to get in front of a crowd. You're taught that oral advocacy in college, in law school. Use that in the business world. I think that's helpful.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And you know what else? When you were saying that, I remember in a class I took called Alternative Dispute Resolution, there was a book called Getting to Yes. I'm forgetting what the name of the author was. It was Roger Ulrey, I think. But I found that that's very helpful in terms of using those particular skills when you're trying to build consensus, among a lot of people, is like, how do you get to yes? And it's actually a much more positive way of practicing business. Like, oh, we're never going to be able to do that. On the other hand, how do we figure out how we get to yes, or the best answer to yes? Caitlin, like you went into a sort of a new industry at the time. It's now it, like I said, one of the most important roles they have in healthcare. But outside of that specifically, any advice that you would give to people that are kind of considering a pivot?
Yeah, actually, two things. So one of the things that my parents said to me when it was, our decision, only child work is a triumvirate and everything, that I was not really going to study for the MCATs. I was going to do the LSATs and well, we hate lawyers. Like, what are we going to, I can't do this. And it's, you can do anything with a law degree. You don't have to practice. And their example, oddly enough, was always you could own restaurants. Those are regulatory heavy. So you can do anything. And another example, I have a good friend who works, she's an on-air personality for one of the business channels. And my point being, she is an attorney and never liked practicing, but now she works in a subject matter heavy job. She's always having to learn new things for reporting and being on air and business wise. So, yes, the markets and what she had to learn, she had to do an in depth thing on crypto because she had no clue what it was, but she was assigned that role to do for her job. And so, if you want to pivot, use your concept of being in law school as just a subject matter possibility. It's just, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go? Are you going to do business? Or are you going to be an on-air personality for a business channel? Are you going to own restaurants and have to learn all those regulations and sign those contracts and do all those labor laws? My fiance works in trucking. He is a compliance officer, more or less, but they call him a safety director. He has a compliance officer for Department of Transportation regulations. She's endlessly reading all of that stuff, and she will send me text messages and be like, what does this even mean? What is this? How do I find this? And so that's another field that's not healthcare related, but another area where you can just never really say you're even an attorney, but it's going to be beneficial.
It's interesting. We're talking mostly about healthcare, but it's to your point, the law touches pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Right. You can, there's nothing that doesn't have the law involved in it. My daughter actually goes to an acting school, LaGuardia High School here in New York City, home of the champion New York Knicks. By the way, how'd the Bulls do this year, Caitlin? Yeah.
Right there
So
with
anyway,
the
but
Shots fired.
so, but she is thinking, she's thinking, I'm not actually going to be an actress, but I do want to go to law school and represent people in the entertainment field, right? So you find what your love is, you'll find a pathway through law to get to it, right? Is kind of what you're saying. I think that's, yeah,
absolutely.
I think we're on the same page about that.
Michael, can I tag back in for 2 seconds?
Please, absolutely. Yeah.
So the other thing is talk to people, right? Just strike up conversations, do whatever you can do. You reach out on, LinkedIn, go to, industry, coalitions and, different forums and talk to people. My experience personally anyway is that if you ask somebody point blank for help, they will help you. I mean, 99 out of 100 times they'll help you. And also never end one of those conversations without saying, now that we've talked and I've told you, what I'm trying to accomplish, and you've been very helpful. I'm very grateful for your time. Can you think of like one or two other people in your network that I might talk to that could help me given what I've said, right? That's kind of the way to get it done because establishing, personal opportunities for yourself in this day and age is just so much knowing people. I mean, we're in a world, if you're like, oh, I want to leave law, I see this interesting opening on, LinkedIn, some job posting, and you shove your resume at it. I mean, Santush can probably talk to this, but like in HR, I mean, the second a rec is open, they have like 12,000 instantly fired applications, and a lot of HR teams aren't even looking at stuff anymore. They're using AI to process it, just say, okay, here's like 16 that look good. Everybody else gets dinged, right? So it's really very much about interpersonal relationships. So that's all I wanted to add.
Yeah, you had referenced Santosh in that, and do you have anything to say about any of that, Santosh?
Yeah, I mean, I think what Rob said is true, and what I think is what's going to set you apart. But I do want to touch on something that Rob said because it kind of triggered me. So I think that many times when someone's like, oh, I'm done with this job, I want to move on. Oh, I know that person at this company, I'm going to talk to them, maybe I can get a job. That's probably not going to be as successful as you think, right? You've got to do the work, as Rob was saying. You got to do the research. You got to talk to people. It's far stronger for you to go and say, listen, I'm thinking of this. Can you help me talk it through? And then yes, keep getting those names and keep talking to people. But don't say, hey, can you get me a job? That's not going to get you very far in this world.
100%. 100%.
Caitlin, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I actually have a really great example of parlaying, connections, but not asking for a job. My soon-to-be brother-in-law is works for Baxter. And when I was looking to pivot a year ago, I saw a job posting on LinkedIn, and I knew that with Baxter, no offense, Santosh, that the algorithm was going to kick out my application because there was no pharmaceutical background in it. No, like it literally never said the word pharmaceutical anywhere on my, but I knew I could do this compliance-based legal job. And so I said to him, can you put me in touch with whoever the recruiter is for this role? Just so I can send an email and say, hey, if it kicks me out, like, do you think maybe this is still an applicable job or something like that, or that I should keep applying for things with Baxter, even though I don't have a pharmaceutical background? Do you think my other skills parlay? And he came through. He found the recruiter. I connected with her on LinkedIn and sent her an email. And she was like, oh my God, yeah, it actually did kick you out, but I would have like pulled you if we had not used an algorithm. So use that both your connections, but also in that kind of a framework. We're not knocking AI, we're not knocking HR, but we're just saying like maybe it wouldn't, maybe you don't have the 5 to 7 years of experience, you have 4, but AI is probably not going to pull you if it's a bigger company. If it's a smaller company, like I just knew Baxter was going to kick me, like the algorithm at Baxter was going to kick me out. But smaller company, maybe not. But so understand where we're going again with that AI concept in those situations as well.
I
Can I
think
just touch on something Caitlin said? I'm sorry, Michael, I didn't mean to
yeah,
cut
go
you
ahead.
off.
Go ahead.
I think also it's important to, like I was talking about public speaking and oral advocacy and just getting out there, but getting out there is also important. So become members of organizations, societies, whatever they are, associations, as much as you can. Get yourself involved, become committee members. The more you do that, the more people you meet. The more people you meet, the more connections you'll have. It does lead, it really does. It's hard work, but it does lead to good results.
I think that raises an even larger point. I'm just going to pull back and like from the psychiatrist view, people don't talk to people anymore, right? Like just largely speaking, I go to dinner and I'll look over at the table next to us and there's 6 people in the same family and they're all on their phones, not talking to each other. I think that we've kind of forgotten how to mingle. People don't join things anymore. It's great that Kimberly started this organization so that we can all speak with each other, right? But there's this lost art of conversation. And what you're saying, Santosh, really resonates with me because I think it's fair to say, the country's in a weird place. It's very polarized right now. I think that we have more in common than that differentiates us. And if you really talk to people, you figure it's much easier to see that than sitting there getting all of your news from one app on one phone, right? Like actually interacting with people. So it's not just good for society, but it's good for mingling and figuring out what you want to do with your career. That just really struck me in a really strong way. Thank you guys. Now in healthcare, we all have sort of differentiated backgrounds. Anything that you're seeing that's new, emerging careers in healthcare, particularly ones where a legal education might be helpful?
So I will hop in to
Yeah.
piggyback what I was just saying about AI, especially in a lot of larger health systems, or even just a small singular or standalone couple hospitals, legal departments are taxed. You'd be surprised how many small, medium, large health systems use outside counsel, and even just for contracting, for leasing, for real estate, for all of that. And when I left my previous role, it was just getting started with AI, and our legal department couldn't touch it with a 10-foot pole. They just did not have the bandwidth. And so one of the things that I have seen, especially from some of the legal and compliance associations, is that compliance is going to become responsible for AI regulatory understanding and implementation, especially because they are going to be very policy heavy. What can you do? What chatbots can you use? What auto recording can you use? What note takers can you use, especially in healthcare? And we thought when we had scribes coming into the exam room that things were getting, or when we were using Dragon to have people dictate their operative reports, that it was like, oh my God, how are we going to deal with this? What are we going to do? All this information's out there. And we didn't really think that AI was going to surpass that in the pantheon of, oh my God, almost. And you can even see on the news that the government is fighting with different states on who's going to regulate what in AI, and from what I have read, their guinea pig is going to be healthcare because it is so prevalent and so potentially easy to use AI in healthcare for just those same reasons, for scribing, for noting, all of that. But that again, legal is not going to be able to take the mantle for it, even though it's going to be regulatory and laws and all of that. It's going to have to be possibly compliance because you're going to have to implement. When legal has to do things in a hospital system, it's contracts, it's, you know, lawsuits, it's risk. Compliance in healthcare and systems with providers, with device companies, it's regulatory, which is what AI is going to end up being heavy into. And it's going to be what you can and can't do. And how do you teach people? How do you put that out there? And not just in a policy to say, yeah, here, you know, HHS, here's my policy. Well, how are you going to follow it? So, and that is always going to be compliance. So AI for sure. And then not to, you know, take over your mantle, Santosh, but HR, I have seen when I was doing when I took a year off and was kind of job searching, I saw a bunch of roles in HR healthcare. So, you know, in addition to AI, I foresee HR being an area as well.
Interesting. Yeah, Santosh, what do you think about it from that point of view?
Yeah, so actually, just to that point, so we were actually a smaller HR department for quite some time, and we're finding that HR, was more of an afterthought. I want to say 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Now well, I like this position, but what I mean is I serve as the right-hand man to the CEO. So where every decision has to have, it has to be employee focused, employee centric, because they're the ones at the end of the day who are providing the care. And so HR really is exploding in healthcare. And there's all different types of positions. You can have a whole employee relations. I failed to mention this before, but from a legal perspective, employee relations is huge because you're doing investigations, you're making determinations in terms of not just discipline, but termination, very complex investigations as well. So I do thank you, Caitlin, for bringing that up. I do think it's going to be exploding HR in healthcare.
I think that's
So
good. Yeah, go ahead, Rob.
yeah, so I can chime in. So a couple things. One is that, the healthcare in general has been struggling for a while to try to transition from fee-based to value-based care, right? So we've got this, volume-oriented fee for service. I see a doctor, they do a diagnosis, they enter certain procedure codes, they get paid by the health insurance company for, doing those particular services. And it's gotten us in a lot of trouble as an overall, domain and overall industry, right? Because costs are just exploding. So there's this pressure now appropriately to move to value-based care, and figuring out how to structure that is a really big, important puzzle that a lot of people are starting to turn their attention to. So there are jobs emerging in and around how do you structure value-based care, and make it work. And then the other thing is, there are more and more kind of specialty solutions contributing to the overall ecosystem. And so I see a big emerging job in, what kind of vendor integration and contract management, like to be able to say like, oh, there's this piece, this piece, this piece, here are all the contracts associated with them, and here's how it all has to come together for this particular, integrated delivery network, this particular health system.
That's a really interesting point. As we were talking before, and Caitlin, when you first brought up AI, it kind of struck me as well. A lot of physicians are concerned that they are going to be replaced by AI. You think about, I have a friend who's a radiologist. He's like, well, AI can read a CT scan, right? Like that. So, and I had a conversation with a gentleman. He's a professor at Oxford University, and he was nominated for a Nobel Prize in AI. And first of all, I was thinking, what am I doing at the same table with this person? I mean, it's unbelievable, right? Like, but then I said to him, I said, listen, I have colleagues who are concerned that they're going to be replaced by AI. And he said, listen, that plane that you took over here to Heathrow, that doesn't need a pilot, right? He's like, well, yeah, you do. He's like, no, not really. It can kind of fly itself there. And he said, I think that people in our lifetime are going to want to speak to a healthcare provider, right? And what he actually said to me was, AI is not going to replace doctors, but doctors who know how to use AI are going to replace doctors who don't know how to use AI, because it does, used in the right way, it can decrease the amount of administrative tasks that healthcare providers don't want to do. Like some of the things I mean, ask 10 doctors if they like charting and doing progress notes. Like you'll get 10 no's, right? That's the worst part. And all the forms that you have to fill out for disability and all those sorts of things. There's a hope that it can be used to allow us to spend more time with patients, actually, and have those other things be taken care of in the way that they can be taken care of by AI. And I'm wondering, because you brought up the regulatory, do you see that sort of thing happening, Caitlin, where it's going to make the providers more efficient? Or are they worrying about what my colleagues are worried about, like this is going to take my job away?
No, absolutely. And I almost have that hope of a bell curve. So it used to be, not a lot of administrative paper, doctors were able to doctor and all of that. And then it just went up and up and up. And, now it's such a bloated system of so many people doing, work under the corporate entity of the hospitals instead of the clinical. I think it's going to go down with AI, where it's going to go back again towards clinical, because you're not going to need as many people checking the CPT codes and checking to make sure that you can see the signature in the progress notes. Or, if it's a non-controlled substance that somebody puts in a refill for, the PA doesn't have to look at it. It should be the MD, but the MA can just like slide it through, or AI can figure out that yes, they were here last month. They, don't need to be seen. They can put this through, that it's not too early, all of that. And I think that the best way that is going to happen is just those administrative burdens are going to go away, but AI is still going to be functional for the real health care industry. And not to plug myself, but we're going to be able to, in compliance, show everybody who will still be in the field how to leverage that appropriately.
I think it's fair to plug yourself. And I think it is interesting, it's the amount of work that goes into all of these things now, so different. When my dad would take us on rounds with him when he was practicing in like the late 70s, early 80s, he would see a patient and that we'd go, and his progress note was like, patient doing better, increase propranolol to 50 milligrams for blood pressure control. We'll see tomorrow. Like that would never fly anymore, right? You have to give the whole story about why the patient still needs to be in the hospital to justify medical necessity, right? Is there anything else that, as we're speaking here, we're coming up on time where we're going to have some Q&A, but before we get to that, I just want to give everybody one last chance to say something about the decisions that they've made. Would you make it again? And where do you see yourself going from here? Santosh, why don't we start with you this time?
It's a question that I ask myself a lot. What did I make the right call? Would I have gone and been partner and trial lawyer or whatever it was? I don't think I would have done anything else. I think I was kind of made for this, what I call hybrid between legal and operations. I think, there's so much opportunity out there. And you can do a lot of things. I think one thing I just want to mention that people, if you're really also passionate about like healthcare policy, there's a whole field of that, right? Like you can go into policy, you can go into lobbying and advocacy. As a passion project, I do lobbying. That's just passion project. Like I don't even do that So last week I was on Capitol Hill and I met with multiple senators and congressmen, and so there's just so much to do, and all I wouldn't be able to do that unless I had my legal career.
That's fantastic. Rob, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, for me, there was no looking back. I mean, what I really enjoy about high growth business, like entrepreneurial business, is it's really just lean towards business at the speed of thought. Like you think of something, way to add value and something to, do and create, and then you gather others and you go and do it. Right? It's unfettered. It's very Nike, just do it. And that's very consonant with kind of who I am and how I operate. And it's, from my experience anyway, it's very different than law, where there are just all kinds of rules, regulations, guardrails, barriers, etc. So
That's great. Thank you. And Caitlin?
I would say actually, if people are really looking to pivot roles and getting into job searching, don't let a job description on LinkedIn, Indeed, deter you. I've had two roles that I technically didn't qualify for from the exact job descriptions. And my one of them, somebody took a chance on me. I did not make the 7 to 10 year experience, and somebody took a chance on me. And she actually took a chance on me because I was an attorney, even though it was in a compliance role. They, lobbied for me and said she'll figure it out. Her abilities as an attorney can probably trump any experience that's lacking. And then my current role now, same thing. It's not a legal role, but I'm pretty sure, that I was hired because I am an attorney. And it doesn't mean that I'm going to do legal work in it, but just because it shows on your resume and may not show up in a job description doesn't mean that it's not going to be in front of mind of hirers or companies. And then in the same, like my current role now, there's a bunch of stuff that I don't do, never have done before, but I can figure it out. It's just reading. You
Uh-huh.
just read through law school, you can figure
Yeah.
it out. So number one is definitely don't let a job description deter you.
I think you make it like a fantastic point. All of us, everybody who's watching this webinar today, went to law school. And the tendency is to think, well, everybody goes to law school. Well, the reality of it is very few people go to law school. And to your point, I think, I've gotten these positions as chief medical officer. Very good chance I didn't get them if I didn't have a law degree, because people do respect the work that you put in to make it through law school, to take the bar exam and all of those things. So keep that in mind when you are speaking to people. Keep in mind that you're leading with one foot ahead because you have that you've accomplished. I know that Kimberly, you wanted me to leave a little time for some questions and answers.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys were fantastic. What I'm going to do now is there are some questions queued up. I'm going to halt the recording. Thank you so much. And your point about having that JD, there are only about 35,000 law school graduates in a given year. So it's very special and very rarefied air. Thank you all so much. Let me stop the recording, and then I see questions in the chat, and I'm going to bring those right up. So let me just